Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Corellia is one of the most important planets in the entire galaxy. It's one of the original founding planets of the early Republic period. Its inhabitants probably had a larger impact on how the galaxy would grow and develop into its current state than even people from Coruscant and Alderaan, which is pretty impressive because Coruscant and Alderaan are widely considered the brain and heart of the Republic. It's from Coruscant that the Republic's political influence would stretch out like a massive web of hyperspace lanes that brought along with it commerce, economic policies, and regulations. It's from Alderaan that high human culture was spread through the hyperwaves in the form of holovids, philosophical texts, and music. But without Corellia, without Corellians, and their insatiable desire to explore, it's very unlikely that the Republic would have expanded as fast as it did or became as large as it would. See, Corellians were born to explore. Even before they had invented spaceflight, Corellians took to the seas and discovered their own oceans, creating a culture that celebrated exploration and the great riches and resources that came with it. On most planets, becoming a doctor or a lawyer or a scientist or something like that is considered a good profession, but on Corellia, it was all about exploration. That was the only true way out of the rat race. That's how one became rich and famous. And I think the reason why so many Corellians are obsessed with exploration was because their starting system was just full of unique things to explore. It's said in legends that the system of Corellia was actually artificially constructed. Basically, someone used an ancient hyperspace-capable tractor beam and cherry-picked ideal planets from all across the galaxy and put it into one system. This is why Corellia has 5 inhabited planets that are considered in the Goldilocks zone, which is kind of unheard of. These planets, known as the Five Brothers, is what really spurred on early developments in the system. The sheer amount of inhabited worlds in the Corellian system is most likely what jump-started their space industry. There was a lot of demand for internal trade inside of the Corellian system much earlier on than on other worlds. As such, the first galactic industry to really grow on Corellia was ship manufacturing, with heavy domestic demand for inter-system travel and trade, and a whole community of explorers, many funded by Corellian royalty. Corellia became the first important shipbuilding world in the core region. Some say that it was Corellian engineers who first managed to reverse engineer the Recon FTL technology, which led to the development of the first hyperdrives. Soon, Corellian ships were taking colonists and settlers from all of the core worlds into the peripherals of the galaxy. This is basically how the Republic would become what it was. Although alien civilizations did dot the landscape of the galaxy, the Republic has always been a more human-centric faction. It tolerates aliens, but at its core, it's a human-driven faction. After the legendary Recon Infinite Empire collapsed of disease, its slave armies, which had been scattered all across the core regions, came together and established the first iteration of the Republic. It was these mostly humans who would start sending sleeper and generation ships to the outer edges of the galaxy, colonizing and reconnecting the Recon Infinite Empire's old holdings together via hyperspace lanes. So if the Corellians were the first to explore many of these new planets, they were also the first to build FTL-capable ships, and the first to map out a lot of hyperspace lanes. You would expect that Corellia would be as rich as Coruscant and Alderaan, except that it's not. There's no bustling Yoseminopolis covering the planet of Corellia. There's no utopian society that balances urban sprawl evenly with the natural beauty of the planets. And if you guys watch this channel a lot, you'll probably know why, because, we commonly refer to Corellia as the armpit of the galaxy, aka the New Jersey of the Star Wars galaxy. And yes, I can say this because I spent a lot of time growing up in New Jersey. And when I see guys like Han Solo, Toro, Calican, Kira, they remind me of the type of characters I grew up around. Likeable, but extremely sketchy and unreliable. And other sharp-eyed viewers have commented how Corellia reminds them of the Rust Belt here in America, as in an area that has experienced tremendous industrial decline. Because that is what Corellia is. A forgotten planet that has been on the decline for many centuries. Actually, if you take a look at the surface of the planet by the time the Empire arises, most of the surface is just the wasteland, polluted and covered in debris and large fields of trash. Gone were the vast oceans teeming with fish that ancient Corellian explorers used to sail. Gone were the thick and dense jungle and beautiful snow-capped mountains. The Corellians had traded all of their natural beauty for industrialization. And any Corellian with any money already had booked a flight off the planet to greener pastures, and the individuals left were mostly too poor to leave or debt-trapped by one of the corporate entities left on Corellia and forced to work in the factories on the outskirts of Cornet City. The center of Cornet City is where several gangs operated, fighting over scraps and salvage and territory. Many of these organizations employed orphan children and runaways. And so, as you can see, Corellia is in a constant state of dystopia. So what exactly happened to Corellia? I mean, how could one of the most important founding planets of the galaxy have fallen so far? Where do they go wrong? How does this world have a small declining population of 3 billion when Coruscant has a population of tens of trillions? Well, you gotta look no further than the Corellian people and their culture. You see, it's no coincidence that Corellians became the first explorers in the galaxy and, created the first hyperspace lines. For one reason or another, Corellians as a group were always amongst the most ambitious and individualistic people in the galaxy. Maybe it was early overpopulation that made Corellians desperate to leave their planets for, better opportunities. Or maybe it was just the desire of every Corellian explorer to have a planet to call their own. This independent spirit and also greed is what defined Corellians, especially in the early Republic period. And this is what allowed this faction to have such importance in the wider galaxy. And we see this independent spirit in every aspect of Corellian life. For instance, most Jedi in the galaxy adhere to the Tython Temple's rulings and teachings. But not the Corellian Jedi, of course. They had their own beliefs and practices and structure. For instance, Corellian Jedi tended to wear green robes instead of the more muted tones of the Tython Order. They also tended to pledge allegiance not to the Republic, but to Corellia. I mean, Corellian Jedi were patriotic, nationalistic, and they were proud of that. They were known for only taking jobs in the local sector and helping out fellow Corellians, and they fostered a very close relationship with Corsec, or Corellian security forces, and they also helped keep local crime to a minimum. Corellians are not just known as, explorers, merchants, and shipbuilders. They also pioneered the profession of piracy. A lot of Corellians would rather work on the other side of the law rather than take a poor-paying job. Corellian Jedi were also known for permitting marriage amongst their ranks, something that mainstream Jedi frowned upon. And this, again, is because of the Corellian culture's focus on family over almost everything else. It was teachings like this that made the High Jedi Council very suspicious of the Corellian sect. Some leaders of the traditional Jedi Order even saw these Jedi as heretics. It's unknown when the Corellian Jedi split away from the wider order, but at the root of this split was the traditional Jedi's loyalty to the Republic versus the Corellians' love of their home planet. This might be one of the major reasons why actually the Jedi started recruiting children that were too young to really develop a, worldview or galaxy view. And this relationship between the Corellian Jedi and the Jedi Order very much reflects the relationship between Corellia and the Republic. Even though it was a member state of the Republic and held substantial political and economic power because of its founder status and control over the Corellian trade spire and run, Corellia would oftentimes oppose official policies set by the Galactic Senate and pursue its own interests. For instance, in 17,000 BBY, Coruscant would come into conflict with its neighbor, Ulsaken, which also happened to be the next stop on the extremely busy Prelimian trade route, which ran all the way from Coruscant to the Tion Cluster, a population center in the Outer Rim during ancient times. The Ulsakens and Coruscanti would have numerous conflicts in the next few thousand years, and most of this was on corporate rights and the right of colonization and settling new planets. This is very much a battle for future dominance of the Republic by either Coruscant or Ulsaken. The Corellians had a similar dispute with the Coruscanti over the Corellian trade spire and Corellian run, two hyperspace lanes that Corellia had a lot of influence over, and then Coruscant wanted more influence over. And so as you can see, Corellia kind of understood what Ulsaken was going through, and at the same time, it didn't want to hurt its relations with Coruscant, and so it somehow remained neutral during this conflict despite being a Republic member world. And this was thanks to a special clause in the Galactic Constitution that only referred to the Corellians. It was known as Contemplianus Hermi, or meditative solitude in Corellian. This actually allowed Corellia to close its borders and also withdraw its delegation from the Galactic Senate. This allowed Corellia to basically ignore official policies set by the Republic, including declarations of war. This allowed Corellian citizens and members of the armed forces in Corellia to not have to join the Republic Navy in case they fight another faction. The only thing the Corellians sacrificed was their veto power in the Senate and their seat in the Senate. But they still technically remained a part of the Republic. It was said that the Corellians were given this special honor in the Constitution because of their founding status and just how much work they put into basically exploring all the hyperspace lanes and settling new planets. But only Corellia is allowed to do this in galactic history. Now, this clause was rarely enacted, but when it was, it usually represented the Corellians' fiercely independent mindset. During the vote for the Military Creation Act in 22 BBY, which threatened to establish the first Republic standing army in almost 1,000 years, Corellia would once again invoke Contemporaneous Hermy and withdraw from the Senate and close its borders to the rest of the galaxy. While this act spared Corellia from the worst parts of the Clone Wars, it didn't really spare the planet from Emperor Palpatine's takeover. It's not surprising that for most of its history, no matter who was in charge, Corellia was considered a world with a rebel spirit. But when a culture is so extreme, there are always going to be imbalances which cause problems. Yes, Corellians and their ships helped explore and settle much of the expansion region of the galaxy and beyond. But the independent nature of Corellia also meant that the local government was extremely weak and also chaotic. With power and loyalty concentrated at the family level, it was really hard for the central government to get anything done. For instance, even though there was a Corellian security force, there were also local and city-based security forces as well that only reported to the local government. As such, the central government failed to properly plan industrial expansion on the planet, leading to colossal boom and bust cycles, mostly driven by greedy Corellians looking for short-term gain. This is the reason why Corellia would become so polluted and desolate by the time of the late Republic. And so while Corellian society created many very impressive individuals, as a whole, it kind of failed to continue to nurture the planet of Corellia and turn it into a more advanced civilization. As a society, the Corellians' inability to unify under a strong central authority meant that the planet would fall into complete ruin by the time the Empire had taken over the galaxy. A stark contrast to Alderaan and Coruscant. It was the Coruscanti's love for bureaucracy and regulation that helped their planet absorb trillions of citizens, and it was Alderaan's enlightened sense of community and social responsibility that created the utopian society we see there. On Corellia, you were more or less free to fail, and you were also free to succeed. There was very little to help you and very little to stop you from doing well. With very limited power given to the central government, this imbalance led to unsustainable industrial growth that would force most of the planet's inhabitants to flee. And as the Republic expanded ever outwards, it became increasingly expensive to manufacture starships in the core regions. And with most of Corellia's manpower fleeing to other planets, it became very hard for Corellian ship companies to compete. Corellia is a reminder that unchecked economic growth in the long term will destroy the very foundation of the economy you're trying to build. By the time the free trade zone was established in the Outer Rim, very few independent Corellian companies remained. Over the years, one Corellian conglomerate known as Corellian Engineering Corporation would basically consolidate the planet's industrial might into a series of orbital shipyards, which would remain Corellia's largest source of income. But once the Empire took over the galaxy, and Emperor Palpatine started building his industrial military complex, well, Corellian Engineering Corporations was one of the first assets that he absorbed. As one of the early ship manufacturing worlds, Corellia had become arrogant and comfortable in its leadership position in the shipbuilding market. They never took advantage of the many economic and political partnerships they could have made with other core world planets. They didn't attempt to make partnerships with resource-rich worlds where they could have built more foundries and mines for their operations. Corellians also didn't enjoy cultural exchange. Despite being an explorer faction, Corellians loved Corellian things. Some Corellians even refused to marry non-Corellians. Others didn't like doing business with outsiders. And so while Corellia initially had a huge advantage compared to the rest of the galaxy as one of the founding members of the Republic, its arrogance and its isolationism eventually let all of its advantages slip through the cracks. Like most isolationist powers in history, it sacrificed long-term partnership and growth for short-term stability. But as an export-reliant world, this ultimately doomed the planet as it never could increase the size of its operations large enough to survive the boom and bust cycles in the ship manufacturing industry. So there you have it, guys. That is the story of Corellia. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, the democracy. I'll see you next time.